is not alone in the shot. The rock formations evoke eternal truths, like Greek temples. In a John Ford movie, there's always conflict between individuals and civilization. Maybe that's Irish. In many other filmmakers, in Howard Hawks, for example, landscapes are bare. Gods are missing, along with families, social classes, races, anything predefining people. Whereas in Ford, there's no such existential liberty. His people live and breathe their culture's values and traditions, their religion, race, and class. Civilization is imposed on them from birth. Thus, Ford movies are also documentaries, partly. Here we sample Tonto's sunny manners and mores. In contrast to Lordsburg's dark vice. Yet they're two faces of the same corrupt civilization. For example, Luke Plummer is a killer, but Tonto jails Ringo, persecutes Dallas, and seems run by the banker's wife.
We're the victims of a foul disease called social prejudice, my child.
Stagecoach's outrage at corruption echoes its own time, 1939. Specifically, bankers were hated in Depression America. Lots of people had lost all their savings to banks, felt victimized by forces of order, and yearned to escape. Some indeed are fleeing. Others have a destination. No one expects they're on a moral pilgrimage to the city of God, to Lordsburg, and a confrontation with who they really are.
Tell him his
I'll have you indicted for murder if you step outside with that shotgun.
But indeed, 19th century English Protestant Americans, Emerson, Hawthorne, Cooper, Twain, Whitman, saw nature as the visible manifestation of invisible truth, in which each individual has to find their own way. Each of Ford's characters embodies a peculiar social caste, which Ford makes vivid through his technique of introducing characters in a vignette or cameo, like here.
Whoa, steady, ho,
In contrast, today's fashion is the instamatic photo, capturing reality on the wing. Ford's style is more like 18th century portraits in oil, a cameo overloaded with detail, like here. Because we know at first glance so much about a character, Ford can rapidly interweave stories of a dozen characters.
I think it best we go back with the bosoms.
Without ever confusing us.
Con este cantar.
I beat it with a whip and she never gets tired.
We probe for the person within each of them.
Whoa, steady, ho.
Each of them has a backstory.
My father and brother were shot down by the Plummer boys. Guess you don't know how it feels to lose your own folks that way.
I lost mine when I was a kid. It was a massacre on Superstition Mountain.
Each cameo is a mask. Gatewood's mask drops quickly in a populist cartoon of a banker clutching his money bag. But we don't know what caused Hatfield to ruin his life.
I was in your father's regiment.
Or Doc.
Who am I to tell you what's right or wrong?
Or Dallas. At first, she's just show people. Later, we probe her to the tune Gentle Annie, a ballet.
I'll take the baby.
How rich and beautiful Ford's cameos are. Almost every shot is a movie all by itself. The fence marks civilization, but Stagecoach is a sense of vision expanding. Beyond the fence, possibility is limitless. Stagecoach draws you in, then expands. Had there ever been a bigger shot in movies before this one? Vast, like our aspirations in life. And dreams come true.
They're saved from the blessings of civilization.
Is this realistic? Well, is this realistic? Bierstadt was inspired by German romantics. Landscape and light summon us to the transcendent. Is this a realistic way of looking at the West? Ford too is inspired by German romantics, and via the amazing photography of Bert Glennon. Its feelings are important, inner reality. Tactile feelings too, in dust, weather, animals, and flesh. Spaces too make feelings tactile, amplify them. Everything happens in the space between people.
I'm joining Richard in Lordsburg. He's there with his troops.
He's a lot nearer than that, Mrs. Mallory. He's been ordered to drive forth.
Why, that's the next stop of the stagecoach. You'll be with your husband in a few hours.
Shock of first contact. Intimacy sudden and unexpected.
Oh, I'm so glad to see you, Lucy. Sit down, darling. We'll have a cup of coffee. You must be tired from that long
Who
trip.
is that gentleman?
Hardly a gentleman, Mrs. Mallory.
I should think not. He's a notorious gambler.
Their story is a series of glances exchanged, even twisting over their backs. The windows are geometric constraints to desire. The producer, Daur Afsanok, looking back on half a century of making movies, concluded that Ford was the best director in the history of motion pictures, because, Sanok said, Ford's placement of the camera almost had the effect of making even good dialogue unnecessary or secondary. Does Hatfield follow Lucy seeking salvation, the lost purity of his childhood in a great lady?
I'm offering my protection to this lady.
Shall he gamble for redemption? One glance decides him. The space between them seals his fate forever. At dinner, everyone glances.
Sit down here, man.
Everyone glances except Ringo.
Sit down here, man.
Is he so innocent he doesn't recognize a horror or notice everyone's shock?
Thanks.
Now the camera's movement inward conveys the weight of offense that is so physical that Dallas cringes. Here Ford shows reactions before showing what's causing them. Ford often shows reactions before causes, always with motion. Feelings are important, not causes. In a piece in Film Quarterly, Nick Brown argues Ford disappears in this sequence. He says Lucy becomes the author, that we experience events as though part of her gaze, and thus we're implicated in her cruelty. But that our empathy for poor Dallas makes us repudiate Lucy's gaze and her moral authority. Perhaps this is so. My experience of John Ford is different. Fordian cinema is not like Alfred Hitchcock. Ford doesn't want unquestioning submission by us to the camera's manipulations. He wants empathetic distance. So, against Nick Brown's argument, the content of the shot is Dallas, not Lucy. Why would Lucy author a meditation on Dallas's pain, the very thing Lucy's insensitive to? Contrary to Nick Brown, we don't see Lucy from Dallas's point of view. So we're not implicated in subjectivity, as we might be in Hitchcock. Here's the table with Lucy at its head, and Dallas and Ringo on the right. The camera's where Lucy's eyes are. In Hitchcock, the next shot would be from Dallas's point of view, and rhyme with the first shot. Hitchcock would put the camera like this, in the position of Dallas's eyes. This would implicate us in the character's subjective chat. But this isn't what Ford does. Ford puts the camera at the opposite end of the table, so Lucy stares to screen right, toward Dallas. So the camera isn't Dallas's gaze. Ford is the author. Ford doesn't want us to identify with either woman. He wants us to feel and understand. Lucy is barricaded inside her emotions, yet her emotions permeate the air and light around her. This is what Ford wants us to experience, not Dallas's gaze back at her. How in fact can Dallas gaze back? Lucy's all sealed up in propriety.
May I find you another place, Mrs. Mallory? It's cooler by the window.
Thank you.
Of course, we hate her. And Ringo assumes the snub is due to him.
Looks like I got the plague, don't it?
No, it's not you.
They're in a kind of prison, we understand. Only beyond the fence could they sit talking like this. And then Ford does a weird thing. He moves the camera clear across the room to a perspective outside, behind their backs in fact, and starts music.
You're ill, Mrs. Mallory.
No, it's just that I'll be all right. You've been very kind. Why?
In the world I live in, one doesn't often meet a lady, Mrs. Mallory.
Have you ever been in Virginia?
I was in your father's regiment.
I should remember your name. You're Mr. Hatfield.
That's what I'm called, yes.
And now we find ourselves liking Lucy.
Have you ever been in Virginia?
She's another of Ford's Katharine Hepburn types, or Grace Kelly in Mogambo, or My Darling Clementine. She crosses a continent to get what she wants. And Hatfield, we realize, knew Lucy before the war, when she was a girl, when life held hope. Listen to the tone in his voice.
I was in your father's regiment.
She's an angel like Anne Rutledge is to Lincoln, an angel that will cost him his life. And we realize, too, that these people, too, are in prison. They're outsiders, too. Their world no longer exists. They're caught in the West, a jungle of diversity, outlaws, prostitutes, drunkards, gamblers, thieving bankers, harpies, Mexicans, Indians. Is it possible for Lucy to sit beside a whore? She's as much a prisoner of convention as Dallas. She doesn't know it yet, but she's on a pilgrimage that will make her abhor the woman she is now. She's one of Ford's good bad men, like Harry Carey or Ethan Edwards, who, like the good thief, show us one can change. In the end, Hatfield will die, and Lucy will return to prison.
If there's ever anything I can do for...
I know.
Whereas Dallas and Ringo will ride into the sunrise. In short, Ford wants us to empathize with people, not to ally against them like the harpies, but to see without intolerance.
Child, who am I to tell you what's right or wrong?
So Ford never has 2 point-of-view shots in a row. Ford's editing is always fascinating. That's the point of this video, how much Ford does in each shot. Nothing could be more erroneous than Andre Bazin's notion that cutting in Ford is somehow invisible, that we're not supposed to notice it. That's like saying we shouldn't notice rhythm in music. Film critics today talk about Stagecoach being a classic Western, made at a time when the genre was innocent and its conventions were fresh. Nothing could be further from the truth. Audiences were well aware in 1939 that they were seeing the 7th Cavalry ride to the rescue for the 0th time. There had been thousands of Westerns in the 30 years before Stagecoach, and before that thousands of popular novels. Harry Carey Jr. went to see Stagecoach in 1939 with his father, Harry Carey, who'd been Ford's Western hero in 25 films in the teens. And young Carey regretted it, because his father wouldn't shut up. The whole time he kept saying, "We did that, we did that, we did that." Indeed, the baddie Ringo guns down is the same actor Harry Carey killed. So of course it was familiar when the 7th Cavalry arrives. That's why Ford blows the trumpet in our face. Stagecoach made John Wayne a superstar. Did John Ford give him this grandiose introduction to build him up as the folk hero of the American West? Ford had told him, "Duke, take a look over at Harry Carey and watch him work. Stand like he does, if you can, and play your roles so that people can look upon you as a friend." Now Ford's introducing the Ringo Kid, a good bad man, and he's not alone in the shot. Surely gods dwell here, like Ringo, uncorrupted by civilization. Indeed, the Irish Catholic Ford turns Ringo's story into a Celtic miracle play. Is there freedom to seek our way, or only fences and wheels of fate? Even dauntless Ringo is driven in chains to his destiny.
Well, Lordsburg.
Thank you. And you, Doctor.
Fortunately, there are miracles. A baby, a stray bullet, and a god.
Can I meet you back here in 10 minutes?
No ammunition.
I lied to you, Curly. Got 3 left.
What kind of man needs only 3 bullets to kill 3 men?
Wait here.
Ringo fights like a god, with clashes of good and evil, light and darkness, and timpani. and he gets a God's reward. Beyond the fence, anything is possible. Ford's movies are melodramas. Lordsburg is dark because emotions are real in Ford, who is Augustinian and Irish Catholic, because we live not in the bright city of God, but in the dark city of man. Stagecoach is a fantasy, a miracle. Unhappy the land that needs a miracle.